It was a quiet Tuesday when my cell phone vibrated on the table. A message from my mother. Not a plea for help, not an I love you, but a sentence. Mom agreed, you're out of the will. I read that, and I didn't feel anger. I sat on the edge of the bed, the room still dark, and the only thing that came to my mind was my father's face years ago, whispering, "You don't need to fix the world, Anna." And I typed back just 2 words. Perfect. I hung up the phone, and for the first time in years, the silence wasn't loneliness. It was freedom. But freedom has a price, and before the clock struck midnight, that price would begin to be collected. Because the perfect family I was leaving behind was a sham. And I was about to discover that sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't what you receive, but what you refuse to carry.
She remembered Lucas, her younger brother, always surrounded by promises and excuses. He was the charismatic son, the one who just needed a chance. And Anna, the independent daughter, was the one who didn't need anything. That was the argument that supported her mother's decision, and the justification that kept her distant. Anna lay down and closed her eyes, feeling a relief so strange it seemed sinful. The weight of obligation began to dissolve, and the emptiness that remained was almost sweet. Outside, the thunder echoed like the closing of a cycle, and she finally fell asleep without guilt, free from the title of perfect daughter. Have you ever been abandoned by the person you loved most, and yet still felt peace? Then you'll understand what comes next. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell, because here we transform pain into stories that heal. Shall we go together? The following morning, the light filtered softly through the curtains, almost asking permission to enter. Anna prepared the coffee slowly, watching the steam rise from the cup and draw shapes in the air. Each sip was a pause, an attempt to understand what she felt, or what she had ceased to feel. The absence of pain was, in a way, frightening. On her cell phone, the conversation from the previous night remained there, cold and definitive. No new messages, no requests for explanation. It was as if the family had finally officially confirmed the break that had existed for years. Anna saved her mother's number in a folder called Closed and archived it. It wasn't revenge, it was grief. The memories came in waves. The smell of childhood cornbread, the sound of laughter on Sunday afternoons, the father's voice calling them both to dinner. Then, the silence of the arguments, Lucas's absence, the tired gaze of the mother who refused to see. All of this seemed to belong to another life, another time. That morning, Anna walked to the window and looked at the city waking up. People going to work, horns honking, children rushing by. There was a whole world out there, a world that didn't depend on wills or approvals, a world where love didn't need to be exchanged for sacrifice. She picked up a new notebook and wrote the first words of a diary that would change her life. Today I realized that being left behind is sometimes the most beautiful way to move forward. The following days passed like blank pages. Anna still expected to feel the weight of regret, but what came was an almost frightening calm. For the first time in many years, she woke up without the obligation to solve someone else's life. The silence, once painful, was now a refuge. She began to reorganize the apartment, a small 2-room space that suddenly seemed like a whole new territory. Each object she chose to keep represented a conscious choice: what stays, what goes. On the shelf, a photo of her father smiling beside her remained. The others, with her mother and Lucas, were stored in a box.
One afternoon, while going downstairs to collect mail, she bumped into Ricardo, her neighbor from apartment 202. He was carrying a stack of books and had a kind smile. "Sorry, I'm a disaster with stairs and literature," he joked. Anna laughed, a brief, shy, but genuine laugh. Something inside her began to open up, like a window that had been locked for years. Over time, the conversations became routine. Literature, old music, films that ended in silence instead of explosions. Ricardo was a literature professor and had a habit of observing people as if reading a story. "You have the air of someone who just finished a painful book," he once said. She simply replied, "Yes, I did, and it's still being rewritten." On a rainy night, Anna wrote in her diary, "I'm getting used to not saving anyone. Maybe that's my greatest form of salvation." As she finished the sentence, she felt something inside her finally beginning to heal, and for the first time in a long time, she fell asleep smiling. While Anna was rebuilding herself, Lucas was sinking into his own false brilliance. The newly received inheritance seemed inexhaustible. New cars, parties, quick trips, and empty promises of a fresh start. He had become the center of his mother's attention, who proudly repeated, "My boy has finally matured." But maturity never came. The businesses Lucas claimed to manage were fronts, dubious investments, sustained by loans and appearances. Every decision he made was driven by the fear of being forgotten, the same fear that had made him manipulate his mother for years. And Donna Helena, blinded by love, continued to believe every word. The family home, once silent, was now a stage for visits and displays. Lucas spoke loudly about success, while creditors knocked on the door. The walls, which had once heard promises of unity, now echoed lies spoken with confidence. Money bought everything, except the peace he pretended to have. At night, when the parties ended, Lucas drank alone, looking at the old photos on the wall. There was something in his father's eyes in that image that haunted him. The firm gaze of someone who saw his son and knew he would lose him, not to death, but to his own ego. And for a moment, Lucas almost saw himself reflected in that silent failure. Elsewhere in the city, Anna unknowingly wrote about him. "Some shine until they burn out from the inside, and when they fade, they call it a tragedy. I call it justice." The phone rang on a rainy Sunday. Anna recognized her aunt's number even before answering, the same number that for years had been the messenger of bad news. "Your mother is sick again, daughter. She's asking if you'll visit her." The silence after the question seemed to plead for an answer Anna didn't have.
She thanked him, hung up, and stared at the white wall of the room. It was a simple decision, and at the same time, impossible. The daughter who had always rushed to her at the slightest sign of need no longer existed. But the woman who now occupied her place still carried echoes of that old guilt. Ricardo noticed her unease. "Do you want to go?" he asked carefully. Anna shook her head. "No, I want to, but I can't. Going would be betraying everything I've been building." He nodded silently, respecting the space between her words. Sometimes love is just that, not insisting. In the following days, she felt watched by her own conscience. Each cup of coffee, each brief laugh came accompanied by a shadow of guilt. But this guilt no longer paralyzed her. It was merely a reminder that she still cared, and perhaps that was enough. During a sleepless night, she wrote in her diary, "Guilt is the last thread that connects the past to the present. Perhaps when I manage to cut it, the silence will once again be just silence." While Anna tried to make peace with her own heart, Lucas was making deals with hell. Creditors knocked on his door, and he answered with the same rehearsed smile as always, "Everything's under control," he'd say. But control had slipped away long ago, and in his desperate attempt to keep up appearances, he made the ultimate mistake. Lucas convinced his mother to change her will once more. "Just a formality," he said. He used words like guarantee, care, and future, all sweet enough to hide the poison. Weakened and confused, Doña Elena signed without question. Her trembling signature marked the beginning of her downfall. With the document in hand, Lucas used the house as collateral for loans. The money evaporated quickly. Cars, gambling, phantom investments. But his pride prevented him from admitting the disaster. He clung to the image of the protective son, even as he dragged his mother into the abyss along with him. The walls of the house began to show cracks, as if feeling the weight of the lie. The neighborhood whispered. Doña Elena, growing weaker, isolated herself, unable to understand what was happening. And Lucas, consumed by despair and denial, continued to smile, a smile that now looked more like an open wound. In another city, Anna woke up with an inexplicable premonition. She wrote in her diary, "I feel like something is breaking, but this time it's not me." The dream came as a vivid memory. Anna walked down an old hallway, the sound of the clock echoing between the walls of her childhood home. At the end, her father sat calmly, newspaper in hand. "You don't need to fix the world, daughter," he said, without looking up. She woke up crying, but with a slight smile. It was the first dream in which he spoke without pain.
In the following days, she dedicated herself to the writing workshops she had begun to teach. They were small meetings with women who were also trying to free themselves from stories that suffocated them. Anna listened attentively, like someone who recognizes wounds even without seeing them. Each story was a different mirror of her own past. Ricardo helped her organize the sessions, and the bond between them deepened without haste. There were no promises or expectations, only presence. Sometimes he would observe her in silence and say, "You speak of pain as if you were teaching someone to breathe again." She would smile, half embarrassed, half grateful. The apartment, once a solitary refuge, had become a vibrant space, full of voices, books, and unfinished stories. Anna's life was beginning to rebuild itself without her needing to prove anything to anyone. It was a new kind of inheritance, one built with lightness and affection. But news from the other side came back in fragments. A cousin had commented on social media that Lucas was having serious problems. Another mentioned that his mother's house was in a complicated situation. Anna read it, sighed, and closed her phone. It was no longer her duty to run to the fire. This time, she simply observed the flames from a distance. The blow came in the form of an envelope. A lawyer, polite and direct, called Anna. "Mrs. Costa, I regret to inform you, but your mother's house has been put up as collateral for loans. The bank is taking possession." The voice was firm, professional, but each word was a carefully polished knife. Anna sat on the sofa, the phone still clutched between her fingers. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She simply closed her eyes and breathed. It was as if everything was happening again: the manipulation, the mother's blindness, Lucas's self-destruction. But now she was on the other side of the story, no longer as the daughter running to put out the fire, but as the woman watching the flames consume what can no longer be saved. In the following days, the messages began to arrive, first from her aunt, Then, from an unknown number, her mother's weak voice pleading for help. "Daughter, he didn't mean to. He was just trying to protect." Anna listened in silence. Guilt tried to creep in again like an ancient echo. But she replied sweetly and firmly, "I'm so sorry, Mom, but I can't go back anymore." Ricardo found her crying on the balcony. He said nothing. He simply sat beside her in silence, letting time do what words could not. After a long time, Anna whispered, "To love is also to not return." He held her hand and replied, "And sometimes it's the only way not to get lost." In her diary from that night, she wrote, "Some houses are cursed not because of their walls, but because of the promises made within them. Letting them fall sometimes is the only way to rebuild."
The day dawned gray when Anna decided to return, not out of guilt, but out of closure. The journey was silent, each kilometer a buried memory. Upon arriving at the old house, the gate was rusty, the paint peeling, as if time had finally acknowledged its abandonment. Inside, the smell of mold and medicine mingled with that of a home that was no longer a home. Donna Elena sat in the living room, more frail than Anna remembered. Her gaze, once firm, now wavered between regret and confusion. "You came," he murmured. Anna nodded, without smiling. There was no affection or resentment, only a tense peace. It was as if two generations of silence were about to face each other for the first time. Lucas appeared soon after, the same rehearsed smile as always, now fueled by desperation. "Sis, it's good you came. We can solve this together." Anna looked at him calmly. "Solve it? Lucas, you destroyed everything trying to possess what never belonged to you." He looked away, unable to face the stark truth she carried in her voice. The atmosphere in the room was tense. Donna Elena tried to intervene, her voice trembling. "He only wanted to help. You always had everything on your own." Anna took a deep breath, feeling the old anger threaten to resurface, but she held back. "Mom, I didn't have everything. I had to be everything for you. And now I choose to be everything for myself." The silence that followed was more eloquent than any scream. Lucas walked away, murmuring apologies that didn't ask for forgiveness, only pity. Anna looked at her mother one last time. "I came to say goodbye, not to save anyone. The time has come for each of us to bear our own burden." As she left, the cold wind seemed to whisper, "Finally, free." The following days were spent waiting. The call came one afternoon. Her mother was in the hospital. Anna stood there, watching her phone ring, like someone staring at a ghost. Finally, she answered. The doctor's voice was serene and final. "She wants to see you." There was no time for resentment, only the time that remained. In the hospital, the air smelled of disinfectant and farewells. Donna Elena, weak and serene, smiled as she saw her enter. "I knew you would come. You always do." Anna approached, carefully holding her mother's hand. "Not this time, Mom. I came to stay until the end, not to fix things." The mother wept silently, speechless. Lucas didn't show up. Debts had completely consumed him, and shame kept him hidden. Anna knew, but she didn't ask. For the first time, he understood that he couldn't save anyone from themselves. And in that realization, she finally felt like an adult in the face of her own story. In the final moments, Donna Elena whispered, "He doesn't know how to live without me." Anna replied tenderly, "Neither did I for a long time, Mother. But now, love doesn't have to hurt anymore." The words echoed in the room like a brief and heartfelt prayer. When the monitor went silent, Anna didn't cry. She just kissed her mother's forehead and thanked her softly. As they left the hospital, the wind blew warm, the sun pierced through the clouds, a rare moment of peace. In the taxi back, she wrote in her diary, "Some bonds only untie when love understands that letting go is also a form of caring."
The reunion took place in a hospital with white walls and sterile smells. Aina entered without knowing what she would say, only feeling the weight of time between them. Donna Elena was thinner, her face wrinkled with guilt and illness. Upon seeing her, a flash of relief crossed her eyes, as if, for a moment, she believed that everything could still be fixed. "You came," whispered her mother. Aina nodded, maintaining a respectful, almost symbolic distance. Her heart beat slowly, steadily, but without the despair of before. "He didn't mean to hurt you, daughter," Donna Elena began, her voice trembling. Aina smiled sadly. "Mom, he always wanted to. He just didn't know how to admit it." The silence between the two was an old conversation. Aina approached and held her mother's hand. "I've spent my life trying to please you, and it was never enough," she said calmly. "Lucas could lie, fail, disappear, and still be your boy. I needed to be perfect to exist." The words came out softly, but firmly, cutting deeper than screams ever could. Donna Elena wept, trying to justify herself. "He needed me more." Aina interrupted. "And me, mother? I needed you, and you didn't come." For a moment, the two just looked at each other. Two women trapped in poorly distributed loves. Forgiveness seemed impossible, but something in the air was beginning to dissolve. When she left the room, Aina felt a different weight on her shoulders. It wasn't guilt or sadness. It was the realization that not all wounds need to heal together. The past had spoken, and she had finally answered. Days later, the phone rang again. It was Lucas. His voice was hoarse, almost unrecognizable. "Aina, Mom is worse. I need help." Aina closed her eyes, feeling the old reflex to run, to solve things, to be the good sister. But the echo of her own promise came to mind. To love also means not to return. Still, she went. Not for Lucas, but for herself. She needed to end this consciously, not as an escape, but as a complete goodbye. When she arrived, she found Lucas broken, his eyes sunken, and the smell of alcohol clinging to the air. He tried to hug her, but she turned away. "I didn't come to save you," she whispered. The mother lay in bed, her eyes half closed. Aina held her hand and felt its cold, fragile touch. "Daughter," the voice was almost a whisper, "take care of him, please." Aina took a deep breath, her heart heavy. "I can't, Mother. I can no longer take care of someone who doesn't want to be saved." It was the hardest and most liberating sentence she had ever uttered. Lucas was crying in a corner, between sobs and suppressed anger. "You always thought you were better than us." Aina looked at him with compassion, not pity, just understanding. "No, Lucas, I just got tired of being harder on myself." The words echoed through the room like a silent sentence.
As she left, she looked at her mother one last time. There was no anger or pain, just a kind of peace that comes after the storm. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, and Anna realized that the end isn't always tragedy. Sometimes it's just the beginning of something calmer. The news came on a cold morning when Winter still refused to leave. The phone rang, and this time Anna knew before she answered. Her aunt's voice was soft, hesitant. "Daughter, your mother has passed away." For a moment, the world seemed to quiet down, as if even time itself were in mourning. Anna closed her eyes and felt her chest open into a silent emptiness. She traveled to the funeral without tears. The road was familiar, but the scenery seemed different, as if each tree, each bend in the road was a farewell. At the cemetery, the cold wind cut through words that didn't need to be spoken. Lucas was there, dejected, his face tired, and his gaze lost between regret and denial. During the ceremony, Anna remained silent, watching the coffin slowly descend. The sound of the earth falling onto the wood echoed deeply, but it didn't hurt as she had imagined. It was a sound of ending, not of loss. A necessary, almost merciful end. When the priest finished the prayer, Lucas approached. "She loved you, you know." His voice faltered, heavy with drink and remorse. Anna looked at him and replied tenderly, "Perhaps in her own way, and I too, in line." He wanted to say something, but the words were lost in the wind. As people dispersed, Anna remained. She stared at the grave until the sun set, feeling the cold creep up her feet and her heart slowly warm. When she turned her back, there was no sadness, only a feeling that, at last, the cycle had closed. With his mother's death, the house became a broken mirror. Lucas returned to what remained of it, an empty, mortgaged space full of echoes of the past. The walls, once vibrant with memories, now held only the smell of mold and regret. He wandered through the rooms like a ghost, seeking redemption where there was only silence. The creditors began to appear. One by one, they knocked on the door with papers, threats, and merciless figures. Lucas tried to negotiate, but he no longer had the charm or the money. The promises of success had turned into bitter laughter in the empty hallways. He slept on the living room sofa, surrounded by bottles and regrets. One night, drunk and lonely, he picked up the old family album. The photos seemed to mock him, the smiling boy, the proud mother, the father with the stern gaze. In one of the photos, Anna was holding his hand. He traced the outline of her face with his fingers and wept, not for the loss of his inheritance, but for the absence of the only person who truly saw him.
Meanwhile, Anna lived a calm daily life. She worked, wrote, and helped others find their own voice. Sometimes she thought about Lucas, but without resentment. The past was now a closed book, not forgotten, but resolved. She understood that some endings don't require an audience, only silence. One day, she received an envelope with no return address. Inside, there was only a photograph. Her and Lucas as children, smiling on the porch. On the back, a phrase written in shaky handwriting. "Sorry." Anna smiled and put the photo in her diary. She didn't reply, and she didn't need to. Sometimes forgiveness happens even without being spoken. Time passed with the gentleness of someone who understands the value of silence. Anna had moved to a small house in the countryside, surrounded by trees and birds that seemed to sing ancient stories. The air there was different, clean, tranquil, almost sacred. Each morning brought a feeling of new beginnings, an invitation to exist without haste. Ricardo remained present, now more than ever. Their relationship wasn't born from overwhelming passions, but from silent complicity. He accompanied her to writing workshops and read her text aloud, as if the words had been made to resonate in that place. "You are blossoming," he would say, and blossoming is also a form of revenge. The women in the group became friends, almost sisters. They were different stories united by a common thread, the courage to start over. Anna watched them tenderly, feeling that, in some way, each of them healed her a little more. She realized what kind of family this could be, the bond you choose, not the one you inherit. One day, while tending the garden, she received a bouquet of white flowers left at the gate. No note, no sender, just simple, pure, fragrant flowers. She stood there for a few minutes observing them. For a moment, she thought of her father and the serene look he always had. Perhaps it was just an anonymous gesture, or perhaps, who knows, a sign from fate. That night she wrote in her diary, "Peace is not the absence of pain. It is when pain finally learns not to scream." The book was almost finished. Anna titled it, "Houses That Burn Slowly," a collection of stories inspired by the experiences of the women in the group and by her own, subtly woven into the lines. Each chapter was a fragment of healing, a mirror of life. In the end, she dedicated the book to all the daughters who have learned to exist outside of guilt. Ricardo insisted that she launch the book publicly, but Anna hesitated. "I don't want to be an author, I want to be whole," she replied, laughing. However, the project gained momentum. Small publishers became interested, and within a few months, she began receiving messages from readers. People who said they recognized themselves, felt liberated, and forgave themselves. One night, while rereading the manuscript, Anna realized there was nothing more to add. The story was complete, and with it, a part of herself as well. She carefully closed the notebook and wrote on the last page, "I inherited nothing, and therefore I inherited everything."
The next morning, she went to the cafe where she usually wrote. The same people, the same smells, the same background music. But something was different. She didn't feel like a spectator of her own life, but rather its author. Ricardo arrived with a smile and said, "You did it." She replied, "No, I just stopped trying to lose." When she returned home, the sun was setting behind the hills, painting the sky orange and lilac. She took a deep breath, put the diary back on the shelf, and left the window open. The wind blew through the curtains as if to say, "He finished." But Anna knew, nothing truly ends when it's lived truthfully. The letter arrived on a gray late afternoon, along with the wind that precedes the rain. The envelope was plain, with no return address, but the handwritten name made Anna's heart beat slower. For Anna Costa. The handwriting was youthful, uncertain, a reflection of someone still learning to express themselves. She sat at the table, hesitated for a moment, and opened it. Inside, a yellowed piece of paper and shaky handwriting. "Hi, Aunt. My father spoke about you before he passed away. He said he made many mistakes, but that you were the only person who truly tried to help him. He left me this letter and asked me to contact you if I ever needed to understand what true love is." Anna read slowly, her breath caught between the lines. She knew, without needing to ask, that Lucas had left, perhaps fleeing, perhaps exhausted, perhaps simply because there was no other way. His son must have been a little over 15 years old. The words were sincere, awkward, like someone writing about pain for the first time. "I don't want money or help. I just wanted to meet you. I think what's left of our family is in this letter. If you can, please answer me. I live near the sea, in the blue house he said was the only place where he could sleep peacefully." The signature? Gabriel. Anna pressed the paper against her chest and remained silent for long minutes. The past returned, but in a new way, without weight, without demands. It was as if destiny, after so many twists and turns, was offering her a second chance to love without old wounds. She took a deep breath and picked up a blank sheet of paper. "Hi, Gabriel. Your father and I grew up amidst broken promises, but also gestures that taught us to start over. I want to meet you. True love, as your father said, is what allows us to try again." She folded the letter and placed it in the envelope with firm hands. As she sealed it, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. He went to the gate, looked at the cloudy horizon, and smiled. The rain began to fall, light, warm, like a baptism. That night, Anna lit a candle next to an old photo of her and Lucas as children, and whispered, "The cycle is complete." The wind rustled the flame, as if in agreement. Days later, she sent the letter, and as she walked back home, she realized that life,
after all, doesn't end when love fails. It ends when we stop believing in the possibility of starting over. And Anna finally believed. Sometimes, losing everything is the first step to finding yourself. If this story touched you, sign up now and become part of this family of strong hearts, people who learn together to transform wounds into strength. Because here, each story is a legacy left by the soul.